What's good, everyone? It's JamalHaki, and today we're going to be doing a TV series review on Baby Reindeer. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Baby Reindeer is a Netflix limited TV series that depicts a true story by a man by the name of Donnie Dunn, who moves from Edinburgh, Scotland to London in hopes of chasing his dream and becoming a famous comedian. Despite Donnie's dream having yet come to fruition, he is presently presented with a very large obstacle, eerily stalking him, yet surprisingly pales in comparison to that of his unresolved traumatic experience from his past that is harbored within his trapped and confused mind. As Donnie continues to wrestle with the thoughts about his identity throughout the series, perhaps the taste of acceptance initiated the proposition of exchanging a portion of his identity to be one step closer to that of his dreams. But at the end of the day, even through the many of Donnie's attempts to run it away, him as well as the audience are both left with the same question. Was any of it worth it? So, when it comes to talking about the positives and highlights of the series, let's go ahead and jump into that. So for starters, the pacing of the series was excellent. Each episode did a very good job of elevating the stakes within the story, while simultaneously leaving you on the edge of your seat with anticipation for what's to come within the following episodes. In addition, the actress that played Martha, I believe, did a phenomenal job, right? While watching the series, it was like the weight, no pun intended, the weight of her character was so heavy. It was almost like being outside on a hot summer day and the sun is just burning the back of your neck, right? Her presence within the series was felt so heavily, right? Yet the gravity of her character, or the gravity of her presence, was seemingly only felt by Donnie. Sure, you can make the argument that it's felt by us because we're the viewer, but it was seemingly only felt by Donnie. So much so to the point where you start to question, does anybody else notice the tomfoolery and the other things that's happening within this character, Martha? See, Martha is almost like it's like an enigma prying into the life of its interests, regardless of any kind of ramifications, ruthlessness, relentlessness, the commitment that she dedicated herself to all the things that she was doing within the series. I was impressed. And also spooked out. Like, if you ask me personally, Martha is like Pennywise from It, but with like a childlike mindset and access to technology. I'll let y'all connect the dots there. So another thing I want to speak on that I did think was a really good positive throughout the story was I felt the story did a very good job. The series did a very good job in how they showed essentially Donnie being at war within his own mind and his identity. One of the ways I believe that they did this is through his inner dialogue to himself that was captured through him narrating the story. Another thing that could be spoken about is even certain comments that he made. Again, I'm trying to do this without spoiling anything, but one of the comments that he made is that he feels as though he's a fraud regardless of whoever he sleeps with. If you watch the series or you watch the show, you're going to realize like the importance of that line. But he made a comment saying that he feels like he's a fraud no matter who he sleeps with. This comment that he made about himself was in relation to a question that was asked of him, essentially, how does he identify sexually? Despite the clarity of his sexual orientation, I do believe the more important plot point to focus on, especially when it comes to Donnie, is actually how closely linked his why for wanting to become a comedian is to the type of relationships that he desires from other people. The idea or concept of being viewed through lenses that are free from judgment due to it being something that he grew up fearing. Because from his perspective, those with fame and status are not judged. Their mistakes, their flaws, their trauma are not highlighted because people are so mesmerized and captured by their talents and accolades. But though this makes sense through the eyes of Donnie, and the story is told through the eyes of Donnie, this does bring up something that I do kind of have a gripe with. For example, based off the story, the telling of the dreams of that Donnie essentially wanted to be a comedian, we are told that Donnie believes that when you're famous, people see you as famous. They're not thinking about the fact that, oh, this person's a loser. This person is this, that, and the third. You name it. But here's where a little bit of realism has to come into play, especially since the series is based off of a true story. So here's the thing. Though I understand that this is Donnie's way of escaping or running away from his fear of judgment, right? One of the things they touch on within the series, the idea or concept of his dream and the why behind the dream, it just seems very premature and illogical. Let me explain. The reason I'm saying this is because when we realistically think about famous people, celebrities are arguably some of the most judged group of people within the world, right? In fact, if Donnie, right, was ever as famous as he would like to be or as he imagined, so let's say for kicks and giggles, Donnie Dunn, right, the famous Donnie, he's as big as Dave Chappelle, Cat Williams, Kevin Hart, you name it, any type of comedian that you want to fill in the blank. He would have all the eyes and ears intently glued to every single movement, right? Every single one of his movements, which would then what? Increase the likelihood of him being judged. The same type of judgment that he's in fear of, that he's trying to escape. Another thing when it comes to touching on like negatives and dislikes, when it comes to information about Martha's and Donnie's childhood past, it wasn't satiating, right? It was not filling. I believe the show would have benefited from actually 8 episodes instead of sticking with 7 episodes. Perhaps with an additional episode, they could have dedicated a little bit more time to fleshing out some things. Perhaps diving into where Donnie learned or developed this fear of judgment, fear of being judged. And then with Martha, right? We do hear a snippet about Martha's past, right? Through the one out of the hundreds of many voice messages that she leaves on Donnie's phone. But here's the thing. I believe they could have just done a better job or dedicated more time to discussing and diving into Martha's dysfunctional home life and dysfunctional parents, right? And how that could have been linked to her own mental health and unhealthy behaviors that she ends up doing throughout the series. And lastly, again, this may be considered a nitpick, but for someone who has a dream of being a famous comedian, like, how did you arrive at, like, yes, this is funny, this is gonna make them laugh? Like how did you arrive at that type of performance? Like, from what I can recall within the series, and I could be wrong, like the style of comedy that he's doing, the style of performance, like, does he even find his own work to be funny? Like, how did he arrive at that point where this is the style that he's going to do? No, perhaps, maybe, right? This is just my theory. He adopted this style of comedy for 1 or 2 reasons. The first reason, he grew up watching a certain type of comedian, a certain style of comedian that he felt from his perspective was funny. Maybe he had a idol, someone he idolized. I know one of the idols that he mentioned within the series was Richard Pryor. But again, he had someone that he idolized and they used a certain type of comedy that incorporated props. Or perhaps theory number 2, which is what I'm leaning towards, doing this style of performance made it easier for him to portray someone other than himself, primarily due to the fact that when it comes to his own identity is something that he is still in search of.
Oh, is that so?
All in all, I highly recommend people go watch this show. This series will take you on a roller coaster ride of many different emotions. Though this series has very deep, and I'll repeat this, very deep and intense scenes that is filled with shock, suspense, drama, and horror. And I mean horror, depending on, whatever that you may have dealt with in your life. It does do a good job of trying to balance some of those things out with a little bit of comedic relief. And to summarize everything, as previously stated, right, when it comes to the highlights, of the series, right? The series does a very good job of engaging the audience, drawing them in, keeping them on the edge of them seat, wanting more. We're trying to get to the next episode. But then the negatives, right? I believe it just leaves the audience kind of scratching their head. We scratch our head wondering, is it some missing scenes from this show? But regardless, when it comes to what I rate the show, I rate the show a solid 8.8 out of 10. Solid 8.8 out of 10. And I would highly recommend people watch this show. Would I watch it again? Hell no. Cause we trying to move on to something else. Oh! If you liked everything that you heard, tune in, leave a comment in the section, reach out to me, hit up the Discord. We're currently in the middle of trying to build a community. Until then, I look forward to talking to you guys on the next video. So without further ado, it's your boy JamalHaki. Peace out.
I keep the peace, it's essential. I put the peace to his temple. Won't leave a piece of his temple. Somebody check if there's peace in his mental. It's word in my peace, get assembled. They following y'all, it was me first. Might need a priest church. I hit it so bad he finding a peace first. Why would I leave her? I keep the beam, I'm enlightened. I turn to a goddess to rebirth.